Chapter 3: The Corrupt Establishment. Among the deformities of the democratic system, political corruption is one of the most serious because it betrays at one and the same time both moral principles and the norms of social justice. It compromises the correct functioning of the state, having a negative influence on the relationship between those who govern and the governed. It causes a growing distrust with respect to public institutions, bringing about a progressive disaffection in the citizens with regard to politics and its representatives, with a resulting weakening of institutions. Corruption radically distorts the role of representative institutions because they become an arena for political bartering between clients' requests and governmental services. In this way, political choices favor the narrow objectives of those who possess the means to influence these choices and are an obstacle to bringing about the common good of all citizens. Compendium of the Social Doctrine of the Catholic Church, 411. Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. The Washington establishment and the financial media corporations that fund it exist for only one reason: to protect and enrich itself. The establishment has trillions of dollars at stake in this election. For those who control the levers of power in Washington and for the global special interest, they partner with these people that don't have your good in mind. What? Corruption in Washington, D.C.? We are shocked! Shocked, we tell you! Casablanca references aside, many Americans could conceivably dismiss Trump's calling out of the corrupt political establishment with a shrug of the shoulders and a muttered, "What else is new? Tell us something we didn't know." The public's opinion is by now so jaded that in the mouth of any other politician, the assertion could be dismissed as standard boilerplate stump speech stuff. But Trump is different. He is going after that corruption and exposing it. He is rooting it out, branch and all. The amount and scale of the corruption that is being exposed is staggering and overwhelming. So for our purposes here, we will focus on two areas in which the political class, the establishment, has betrayed the American people: financial corruption and corruption in the legal process, or the ways in which politicians have sold their offices for personal gain, and the ways in which corrupt law enforcement entities have one set of rules for them and another for the rest of us. As Trump himself phrased it in the quoted passage, they exist to protect and enrich themselves. First, the enriching. They came to do good, they ended up doing well. President Trump early and often called out the corruption of the Clinton Foundation. Increasingly, we are seeing that he was right all along. But then, this is not new news. Witness a pre-2016 election article appearing on The Hill entitled "Clinton Foundation Memo Reveals Bill and Hillary as Partners in Crime" by Paul Josse. This article, and those cited in the rest of this section, are all stunning and should be read in their entirety. Suffice to say, they describe what can only seem to be a pay-to-play operation involving billions of dollars, multinational corporations, foreign state actors, and the State Department of the United States under Hillary Clinton and others. After detailing a number of problematic activities of the foundation, Josse describes what he calls the unseemly mix of Teneo clients with the State Department during Miss Clinton's tenure. Teneo being a consulting firm that served as a sort of gatekeeper to all things Bill Clinton. Josse later quotes Carly Fiorina, former Republican candidate for president and no particular friend of Donald Trump, as follows. When asked about the Clinton Global Initiative last year, Carly Fiorina stated, "What don't we know about Clinton Foundation donors? What don't we know about the conflicts of interest that those donors represent when Mrs. Clinton is serving as Secretary of State?" Good questions, those. And we got some answers in a scathing November 23, 2018 editorial by Investors Business Daily, which noted that 85 of the 154 private interests who met with Clinton during her tenure at state were Clinton Foundation donors. But its most shocking revelation was how donations to the foundation plummeted after Hillary Clinton lost the 2016 election to Trump. Now, fresh financial documents show that contributions and grants to the Clinton Foundation plunged since Hillary lost her election bid. They dropped from $216 million in 2016 to just $26.5 million in 2017, a stunning 88% fall. The editors went on to ask the right questions. They did their jobs. If the Clinton Foundation was as good as defenders claimed, why did all its big-time donors suddenly lose interest? The only reasonable explanation is that donors weren't interested in what the foundation supposedly did for humanity. They were interested in the political favors they knew their money would buy. Stop and think about that last sentence. They were interested in the political favors they knew their money would buy. Yes, we all are jaded about corruption in Washington, and to some extent, we may be resigned to a certain level of it, but not on the scale of the corruption that transpired in the administration just before Donald Trump took office. Not surprisingly, or perhaps surprisingly given we are talking about Washington, D.C., the story was not over. A couple of weeks after the Investors Business Daily editorial appeared, John Solomon wrote an article for The Hill entitled, "Feds Received Whistleblower Evidence in 2017 Alleging Clinton Foundation Wrongdoing." Solomon's article looked ahead to a then upcoming hearing. When a House subcommittee chairman bangs his gavel next week to convene an unprecedented investigative hearing into the Clinton Foundation, two questions will linger as preeminent. Is the Clinton family charity really the international do-gooder that earned a perfect 4-star rating from Charity Navigator? Or does it suffer from corruption and illegalities as conservatives allege? And if it is the latter, how much evidence of wrongdoing does the government possess? The answer to the second question may reside in 6,000 pages of evidence attached to a whistleblower submission filed secretly more than a year ago with the IRS and FBI. Solomon went on to identify the investigators who filed the whistleblower submission as MDA Analytics, LLC, and noted that the firm alleged that the Clinton Foundation broke the law and may be liable for millions of dollars in delinquent taxes and penalties. Perhaps most stunning because the phrase has become so prominent due to the impeachment process as well as the Biden-Ukraine shenanigans was Solomon's mention of the internal Clinton Foundation review cited by MDA in the report that flagged serious concerns about legal compliance, improper comingling of personal and charity business, and quid pro quo promises made to donors while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. Read the last few words of that sentence again. And quid pro quo promises made to the donors while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. It truly is amazing how the Democrats constantly accuse Trump of the very things of which they themselves are guilty. After further describing MDA's report, Solomon details how he shared the evidence with former federal investigators to assess the strength of it in terms of the potential to bring a criminal case. All of them, according to Solomon, stressed the evidence of potential criminality was strong and warranted opening an FBI or IRS probe. One retired FBI agent was even quoted as follows: "When you have the organizations, the Clinton Foundation's own lawyers using words like quid pro quo, conflicts of interest, and whistleblower protections, you have enough to get permission to start interviewing and asking questions." And yet, according to Solomon, although the IRS sent multiple letters in 2017 and 2018 to MDA Analytics acknowledging receipt of the submission and noting that it was still open and under active investigation, shortly before the 2018 election, that same agency sent the firm a preliminary denial letter indicating it did not pursue the allegations for reasons that range from a lack of resources to possible expiration of the statute of limitations on some of the allegations. One could be forgiven for wondering if the fix was in a lack of resources for what may be one of the largest political corruption scandals in the history of the Republic, possible expiration of the statute of limitations on some of the allegations. Again, one could be forgiven for suspecting that what the IRS was doing there was running out the clock. One set of rules for the powerful, another for the rest of us. But interestingly, the story of MDA Analytics and their research into the Clinton Foundation was not over. The week after Solomon's article appeared, a hearing was scheduled to be held by a congressional subcommittee to review the work of John Huber, a special U.S. attorney who was rumored to be investigating the Clinton Foundation and other things. Attorney Huber did not appear, which was somewhat confusing, but John Moynihan and Lawrence Doyle from MDA Analytics did. And though this was a hearing that did not receive much publicity or viewership at the time, it was both fascinating and revealing. One reporter who did cover the story was Sarah Carter. She correctly identified a jaw-dropping claim when the investigators read off a list of violations or potential violations they had uncovered. Included in the list were the following: foreign agent, misrepresentations, intentional misuse of donated public funds. Look at the first area of violation mentioned by Moynihan, foreign agent. The family foundation of the former president of the United States and his wife, the Secretary of State during some of the time under investigation, operated as a foreign agent. That is shocking, and again invites suspicions of pay to play. Couple that with the interesting fact that, according to Doyle, 0.1% of the donors donated 80% of the funds, and it begs the question, who were those donors, and what did they receive? This may be a good time to buy Peter Schweitzer's Clinton Cash, or, for a more up-to-date review, Profiles in Corruption, which is a much broader view of political families getting rich through their lives of service. The money quote with regards to the corruption that characterized the Clinton Foundation is captured in the following statement by Lawrence Doyle from MDA. The investigation clearly demonstrates that the foundation was not a charitable organization per se, but in point of fact was a closely held family partnership. As such, it was governed in a fashion in which it sought in large measure to advance the personal interest of its principals. A brief comparison of two quid pro quos. So, there seem to have been quid pro quos aplenty in the dealings of the Clinton Foundation. Where have we heard that quaint Latin phrase recently? On the news 100 times a day during the impeachment process. That's where. The corrupt process will be described more fully in a later chapter, but let us consider the obvious quid pro quo that was brought to light recently. Though he is widely mocked and attacked by the majority of the mainstream media, Rudy Giuliani is uncovering, or has uncovered, a web of corruption in the Ukraine involving billions of dollars in American foreign aid that seems to have not been used for those purposes for which it was earmarked. The Ukrainians themselves say it has disappeared, and there is a major American political name involved, Biden, and some others as well, along with certain State Department figures, including some of the witnesses in the impeachment inquiry the House held. Funny that. As was noted in a different context, certain wags online have noted that Trump is not being impeached for crimes he committed. The Democrats are impeaching Trump for crimes they committed, and Ukraine is ground zero of that corruption and those crimes. In the bizarro world of anti-Trump hysteria that characterizes much of the media and the mainstream political establishment, Trump was accused of soliciting a quid pro quo with the new anti-corruption president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. He subsequently released the transcripts for all to see. If you are honest, you will see that there is no conditionality, no quid pro quo. That bears repeating. If you are honest, you will see that there is no conditionality, no quid pro quo. Contrast that with Joe Biden, who was caught on video bragging about his own, what any honest person recognizes as such, quid pro quo. With the flood of information that is available today online and on TV and the 24-hour news cycle, it can be overwhelming to process it all. In such an environment, the average reader can trust only his own common sense and Occam's razor, which holds that the simplest explanation is often the true one. In the case of Joe Biden and his son Hunter, we all read and hear the news, granted with different spins, but we all know that something is not right with the Biden story. More and more comes out about other members of his family using the Biden family name to enrich themselves. What about Trump and his kids, some ask, trying to set up some type of immoral equivalence? There is no comparison. The Trump situation is perfectly legit. His children work in their father's organization, which was established long before he entered political life, while Biden's family has benefited directly from his status as a leading American politician, just as the Clintons did through the Clinton Foundation. If you don't think the money raked in by the Clinton Foundation was tied to their high political office, then reread that Investor's Business Daily editorial as to how donations collapsed under Hillary after Hillary lost the 2016 election to Donald Trump. Her office was for sale. Biden's office was for sale. Again, this is not some pro-Republican screed. Many establishment Republican politicians were likely bought and paid for too, swamp creatures in other words. It was awfully strange how many Republican members of the House decided not to run for re-election in 2018, thus throwing the House to the Democrats. Lobbyist dollars are equal opportunity corruptors when it comes to legislation. It took someone, Donald John Trump to be precise, willing to stand up and say, in effect, that this ends now. We may have chosen other words, but you get the drift.